I'm Katie Couric. Tonight, an historic meeting in the Middle East. The first high-level U.S. talks with Syria in more than 2 years. Could a meeting with Iran be next? Scientists believe they now know what killed the cats and dogs that ate that tainted pet food. And a long-shot horse with a trainer hoping to make history in this year's Run for the Roses.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hello, everyone. The Bush administration finally did today something it has long resisted. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice held talks with the foreign minister of Syria, a country the U.S. accuses of supporting terrorism and aiding Iraqi insurgents. The meeting took place in Egypt during a regional conference on the future of Iraq. We have 2 reports, beginning with Sheila McVicker in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Saying Iraq needs the support of everyone, the Secretary of State reversed U.S. policy today and met behind closed doors with their Syrian counterpart. It was such a delicate diplomatic moment, there wasn't even a photo op.
It was very professional, very businesslike. I made clear that Syria needs to do more to stem the flow of foreign fighters.
As he left the meeting, the Syrian foreign minister was mobbed. We talked about Iraq, he said, and relations between our countries. The Syrians say they hope this is a new beginning. The U.S. accuses Syria of supporting insurgents by letting weapons and foreign fighters across its border into Iraq. Just last month, the White House severely criticized House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's trip to Damascus, saying Syria was a state sponsor of terror.
We picked up things from.
One reason why this meeting might have taken place now is that the U.S. is seeing fewer foreign fighters coming across the border in the last month. But most analysts agree that foreign fighters play a relatively small part in Iraq's violence, and that equally destabilizing and more deadly to U.S. troops is the assistance Shia militias get from neighboring Iran. But it's been 27 years since the U.S. last had diplomatic relations with Iran, back before the storming of the U.S. embassy in Tehran and the hostage crisis. Support for violence in Iraq is now just one on a long list of issues the U.S. says Iran has to deal with. So no talks with Tehran.
What will it take to meet with the Iranians?
So I think the question isn't why won't we talk to Tehran? The question really is why won't Tehran talk to us? It's no doubt that some of the activities that are being undertaken by Iran are not leading to stability in Iraq. And if I have an opportunity to say that to the Iranian, then I will.
Late today, we learned the Iranians left a diplomatic dinner after the U.S. delegation arrived. Not a good sign of things to come. Sheila McVicker, CBS News, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt.
This is David Martin at the Pentagon. It's been 5 months since the Iraq Study Group urged the Bush administration to begin talking to Syria and Iran with urgency and without preconditions, reasoning diplomacy might help America get out of the Iraq war sooner. Just before Secretary Rice's meeting with Syria, the U.S. military acknowledged Syria has clamped down on foreign fighters infiltrating Iraq. Still, John Alderman of the Center for Strategic Studies says Rice's meeting with her Syrian counterpart is a complete 180.
It really is a complete change of course when it comes to Syria, because the administration had an almost theological opposition to talking to the Syrians for a whole range of reasons.
Lee Hamilton, the co-chairman of the Iraq Study Group, says reality may have set in for the Bush White House.
We see that isolating them, not talking to them, has really not gotten us very far.
He still wants to see talks with Iran, but acknowledges that will be a tougher pill to swallow, especially with Iran still trying to enrich uranium for a possible bomb.
There isn't any country on the face of the earth that has caused us more heartburn than Iran over the past several decades.
One meeting is not going to produce a reversal of fortune in Iraq, but the administration seems to have decided stonewalling wasn't producing anything. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
One reason the United States is not holding direct talks with Iran is its nuclear program. In fact, the Iranian president said today he won't end that program even if the United Nations imposes new sanctions. But others in Iran want this standoff resolved so they can see an end to their economic pain. Elizabeth Palmer reports from Tehran.
Traders at the Tehran Stock Exchange are certainly hoping that U.S. and Iranian officials do go ahead with direct meetings in Egypt. That, they say, might send share prices soaring.
We're hoping that this Sharm el-Sheikh will be the opening for better times for us.
Every day, anxious investors crowd into the exchange. For 2 years, they've watched the market plummet due to American and UN sanctions imposed on Iran for its refusal to stop enriching uranium. A big chill has settled over the business community. Investors have been scared off, and it's now almost impossible to move money through major Iranian banks on the sanctions blacklist, like Bank Sepah with its strong links to Iran's Revolutionary Guard.
Hardball sanctions enforcement led by the U.S. Treasury has meant that Bank Sepah is no longer doing business with anyone much outside Iran. In fact, it's been so effectively cut off that even though it has plenty of cash, it's having a hard time paying its overseas debts.
And the business elite aren't the only ones hurting. Middle-class shoppers, many unemployed, struggle daily to cope with 22% inflation. People can barely afford to buy fruit, she says. Even onions and potatoes are expensive. President Ahmadinejad's popularity has already plunged as people blame him. Broker Khosrau Pourmema knows that side talks at a summit won't solve Iran's economic problems. But he does think they'd be a step in the right direction, especially if they lead to better relations with the U.S.
I think discussions, talkings is good.
If Iran's politicians do move from confrontation to negotiation, it's because they, like their counterparts all over the world, know that in the end, they can't ignore the market. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Tehran.
In Israel, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert has ignored demands that he resign in spite of a scathing report on his handling of last summer's war in Lebanon. Tonight, those calls grew louder as tens of thousands of Israelis rallied in Tel Aviv demanding that he step down. Olmert still has the support of most of his party's leaders and insists he is not quitting. Meanwhile, the Secret Service today began protecting one of the leading Democratic presidential candidates at his request. Bob Orr now with that story.
Since he formally announced his candidacy 3 months ago, Illinois Senator Barack Obama has drawn huge crowds.
I am overwhelmed, Austin. I am overwhelmed.
Now his personal entourage is also getting bigger. CBS News has confirmed that Obama, beginning today, is being guarded by the U.S. Secret Service, the first candidate for the 2008 presidential election to receive full Secret Service protection. But officials insist there is no known threat against the senator. New York Senator Hillary Clinton also has a Secret Service detail, but that's because she is a former First Lady. Sources say the protection for Obama was granted by the Department of Homeland Security after a request in recent days from the campaign. Still, with the election 18 months away, it is notable that Obama is the earliest candidate to ever receive a government security detail. In contrast, during the last campaign, eventual Democratic nominee John Kerry was not accorded protection until 9 months before the general election.
Now it's on to Chicago and let's win there.
The Secret Service has been protecting candidates since Senator Robert Kennedy was shot and killed in Los Angeles the night he won the California primary in 1968. And the protection is expensive. $100 million is budgeted for candidate protection in the upcoming election, nearly a 50% increase over 2004.
Now, Obama campaign officials will not say why they requested the early protection, but one source inside the campaign says there is concern about the size of Obama's crowds and the sheer crush of people who want to press close or even touch a candidate who exudes rock star appeal. Katie?
Bob Orr, thank you. There is much more CBS News ahead. Coming up next, scientists may have cracked the case of the poison pet food. We know more tonight about those pet food poisonings. First, how the contaminated ingredients got here. The U.S. government says a Chinese exporter hid wheat gluten tainted with melamine from inspectors by labeling it non-food. Also tonight, scientists are learning more about how the poison gluten turned deadly. Here's Nancy Cordes.
The breakthrough was made in this Ontario, Canada laboratory. A week ago, scientist Perry Martos was trying something new. He mixed together a few drops of melamine and cyanuric acid, the two unauthorized chemicals found in tainted pet food. In less than a second, they formed this mass of crystals, nearly identical to these crystals, which have been found in the kidneys of sickened animals.
If you can imagine an instantaneous kidney stone, that's essentially the way I would perceive it.
His finding may have solved a mystery that has been plaguing scientists from coast to coast. Why would two chemicals individually considered non-toxic be killing cats and dogs, possibly by the thousands?
I think this could be considered an aha moment.
Dr. Kimberly May with the American Veterinary Medical Association says the discovery could end up saving the lives of animals who eat the tainted food.
It's very possible that the crystals that are formed may be dissolved by altering the medical treatment somehow, and that is being investigated.
And that's important because, believe it or not, after 48 days and dozens of recalls, contaminated food may still be on store shelves. Just last night, Menu Foods recalled yet another batch of its products. The Chinese have reportedly made one arrest in the contamination case. It's believed the chemicals were added deliberately as a cheap substitute for real protein. Here in Washington, the Senate voted unanimously today on a bill that would standardize the nutrition labeling on pet food products and would fine pet food makers who don't report problems right away. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, Washington.
And you can get an updated list of all recalled pet foods by going to our website at cbsnews.com. He was a pioneer on the final frontier, one of those brave young men with the right stuff. Former astronaut Wally Schirra died today. He was 84 years old. A former Navy test pilot, Schirra was chosen in 1959 as one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, and in 1962 became the third American to orbit the Earth.
Captain Schirra has his hand up.
3 years later, he guided the Gemini 6 to within a few feet of the Gemini 7, the first time two spacecraft came that close. Schirra was commander of the Apollo 7, hosting the first television broadcast from space and earning an Emmy Award.
Wally Schirra off to your right with this first live broadcast to the nation.
And back on Earth, he made the transition to TV analyst, joining Walter Cronkite here on CBS, covering some of the greatest moments in the space program.
The Eagle has landed.
Boy.
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute.
Wally Schirra, who lived in Rancho Santa Fe, California, had been battling cancer. With his death, just two members of the Mercury 7 survive, Scott Carpenter and John Glenn. Of those space pioneers, Schirra once wrote, "We shared a common dream to test the limits of man's imagination and daring." Britain's Queen Elizabeth is here in the United States tonight on a rare visit, checking up on the former colonies. And she started today where it all began. Here's Mark Phillips.
This visit was planned as a single commemoration for the founding of the first permanent English colony in America 400 years ago. But Queen Elizabeth used this occasion to remember the victims of the Virginia Tech massacre as well.
On behalf of the people of the United Kingdom, I extend my deepest sympathies at this time of such grief and sorrow.
Virginia Tech cadets made up the Queen's honor guard as she mounted the Capitol steps. Away from the cameras, she had a private meeting with families of the victims, a discreet, dignified gesture of sympathy. For Queen Elizabeth, this is a return visit to Virginia. She had been here as a young 31-year-old monarch in 1957. Now, at 81 years old, and on what many feel may be her last official visit, she has come back to right an historic wrong. The Jamestown settlement is now being viewed not just for what the English settlers endured and accomplished, but for the roles played by Native Americans who fed them and African slaves upon whose labor the colony ultimately thrived. And some here were looking for royal recognition of that contribution.
Obviously, truth is always welcomed, and being truthful in this situation would be certainly appropriate and gracious on any monarch's part.
And truth is what they got.
Those early years in Jamestown, when 3 great civilizations came together for the first time. Western European, Native American, and African released a train of events which continues to have a profound social impact.
Not quite an apology, but in a royal way, something very close. An unprecedented recognition that American diversity started at the very beginning of American history. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Richmond, Virginia.
We have a lot more images of the Queen's visit at cbsnews.com. You can click on Photo Gallery. 3 weeks after he was fired for making a sexist and racist comment on the air, Don Imus has decided to sue CBS Radio for breach of contract. Imus was just beginning a 5-year, $40 million deal when he was axed. His lawyer said today his contract acknowledged that Imus was irreverent and that this type of program was, quote, desired by the company. CBS responded today that the firing was appropriate. Coming up next, a trip to Kentucky, where she hopes 13 is her lucky number at the Derby. The Republican presidential candidates are getting a lot of attention with their debate tonight, but the real horse race is Saturday in Louisville, the Kentucky Derby. Here's Sharon Alfonsi.
If he is the future of horse racing, he's oblivious to it. This is the brother of Barbaro, kicking around at a Lexington farm, just 13 days old, unnamed and unaware of all of this. The Kentucky Derby. It's been a year since Barbaro's triumphant win here. A horse who captured the imagination of an entire country with his success and later with his struggles. 4 months after his death, race fans have their hearts and wallets open again, looking for something, some horse to believe in. Will it be the favorite, Curlin? He's only raced 3 times in his career. Or Storm in May, who's blind in one eye. Then there's Pletcher's Platoon. One man will saddle 5 of the 20 horses that will race Saturday. Todd Pletcher.
And does 5 guarantee success?
Not at all. Not at all. And, no matter how many eyes a trainer have in there, there's only going to be one winner.
If Pletcher is playing the odds, Jamie Sanders is trying to defy them. A Kentucky girl who told her guidance counselor she wanted to train a horse for the Derby.
My counselor put his hand on my shoulder and said, look, he says, that's great to have that dream, he says, but come back to reality.
Only 12 women have trained a Derby horse in more than 130 years. Sanders will be lucky number 13 with a horse called Teufelsberg.
And what have you heard people calling him?
Everything. Teufelsberg, Teufelsberg, Tuffelsberg, Toothlessberg.
Maybe it was the name that scared away other buyers. No one wanted him. No one but Jamie and her fiance.
The hammer went down at 9,000 and we looked at each other like, is that right? And it was.
So the $9,000 horse will race against $1 million thoroughbreds this weekend. And Jamie, well, she was offered $3 million for Teufelsberg. Turns out she didn't just have the smarts to buy him, she had the good sense not to sell him and see her dream to the finish line. Sharon Alfonsi, CBS News, Louisville, Kentucky.
And that is the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. Good night.